Hello YouTube, welcome back to another fun-filled and exciting episode of Easy Prepping. Today I'd like to go over what I consider to be some essential skills that every prepper should, well, if you don't know, you should at least have some books, and I do mean paper books, so that you could gain that knowledge. If your electronic devices aren't working, power grid's down, we don't know what an SHTF what the situation could be. So I prefer to have paper books. Let's proceed. First thing I'd like to cover is heating your home, ways to do it in a SHTF scenario. Staying warm in the cold months could be really important to you. And the first, of course, is having a wood stove. Of course, with a wood stove, you have to have firewood. I happen to live on 30 acres, mostly wooded, and there's firewood everywhere. But consider that if you do have a wood stove, make sure you have a good stock of firewood. Next would be propane for heat, or if you're in a city, I guess you would have natural gas instead. One disadvantage of the natural gas is that it will only keep coming as long as the utility pumping it is working. And the disadvantages of the propane is that tank is only a given size. It's not indefinite. But I do have other devices that run on propane, like I think one's called a Little Buddy. And although it's designed to take the small tank, I see them, they're normally green. I bought the kit that I could run to my, well, think of the propane tanks like you have on your grill. Also, I have you can get a 100-pound tank. I got mine at Lowe's. It was about $105, I think, at the time when I bought it, but it is full and it's in the barn. So my Little Buddy would keep going for a long time, and although it would not heat the whole house, it would keep me and the wife warm through at least in one room for an extended period of time. One other point about having propane or natural gas, if your utility provides that, is I have several relatives that live in or near the city that have natural gas fireplaces. They don't burn wood. They have those fake-looking rock log things. And I know from experience being in their homes when they fired those things up, they put out a lot of heat. So if you have that, that is an option for staying warm. And next on my list, number 2, is first aid and home remedies. Not all of us are really certified in first aid and have doctors or nurses in our family. I happen to, but a lot don't. Therefore, if you don't have the knowledge, at least have the knowledge handy in the form of a paper book. Now, I've done a whole video on my library as far as medical is concerned, but I pulled out just one I finally think is probably the best, and that is your American Red Cross First Aid and Safety Handbook. It's probably one of the most simple to read, comprehensive, covers about everything. And a new one that I just got yesterday because, well, I don't think the pharmacy might be open. I've got the Herbal Remedies and Natural Medicine Bible. Saw this on Amazon, thought good one to add to my library. Now that I've opened it and glanced through it at least, I do believe it's a worthwhile purchase. So, if you don't have the knowledge, at least have it in a book on the shelf. Number 3 is cooking. 2 main aspects of this topic. One is heat. You've got to have heat to be able to put your pan over to cook. One I'd recommend is maybe a rocket stove. There are quite a few commercial made versions. And there's also plenty of videos on YouTube about how to just make one out of, well, if you got some bricks laying around or concrete blocks, you can make your own rocket stove. And they do a very good job at cooking. Then, the next part is just having some knowledge of how to cook, how to use different seasonings, just cooking. I don't know how many cookbooks. A lot of them have come from estate auctions that I've bought off shelves there. But just some knowledge of cooking, get yourself some cookbooks, and research basically how to build, well, I would recommend a rocket stove. And number 4, I've debated with myself for a few days now about whether to include this or not, but I've decided to go ahead and do it. I'm hoping that the YouTube inspectors don't flag me for it. But I decided after reading a series of 4 apocalyptic books, post-apocalyptic books, by an author named Andrew Cunningham. The first book, the 2 main characters, a couple of kids, he's 17, she's 16. To survive, they find some firearms, but they know little or nothing about using them. It never mentions the safety. And it occurred to me that in a post-apocalyptic situation, post-SHTF, there's going to be a lot of bad people running around, I think. My little crystal ball says that. So I think everyone, whether you own firearms now, whether you like firearms or not, you should know the 4 main rules for handling a firearm in a safe manner. Number 1, always assume it's loaded. If the person handing it to you assures you on a stack of Bibles that it's not loaded, assume it's loaded. Just ask Alec. Secondly, always point it in a safe direction because you're assuming it's loaded. Don't ever point at anything that you wouldn't intend to shoot. Number 3, never put your finger on the trigger until you are on site, ready to fire the weapon. And number 4, be sure of your target. And not only your target, but what is behind your target, because there's a pretty good chance that bullet could go all the way through and hit what is behind the target. So please, take these to heart and know them. Even if you don't think you will ever touch a firearm, know these 4 and keep them in mind. Number 5, I'm going to include living off the land, which I admit I've never done myself. I've never practiced it, but I do have books. Mushrooms. Edible wild plants. Field guide to edible wild plants. As far as eating plants go, I think I've got that pretty well covered. And although I do love to target shoot, I've never been a hunter. But books. Hunting, Butchering, and Curing Wild Game, Volume 1, Big Game. Hunting, Butchering, and Cooking Wild Game, Small Game, and Fowl. And as you can see, these are some pretty hefty volumes. There's a lot of information in there. And although I do have this information on the shelf, living out here in the country, almost everyone around me has been hunting and cooking what they hunt most of their lives. So I do have that advantage. But one of the skills I recommend is at least having books on how to live off the land. Next one is one that you may not seem very important, and I wish I was better at it, especially being a former sailor. It's tying knots. Whether you're trying to tie down a load in a trailer, maybe you could be trying to rig up a tarp to collect rainwater, building a shelter out of a tarp. You need to know how to tie knots. Now, I have on my phone several apps that will there are videos that show you exactly which way to turn rope, but I'm not depending on electronic devices working. That's why real books, real paper. And one other I ran across in the shelf that covers tying knots. I don't know if the Navy still does or not. Back when I was in, every sailor was given a Blue Jackets manual. You see, this is fairly thick. And glancing through here, because I know it covers handling line, knots, payment. There's directions on how to disassemble and clean a 1911 Firearms. Anyway, a whole lot of knowledge in this really old book that I've had for a really long time. Another, I think, really big skill that most preppers should have, and not just be able to go to books, but to actually know, is food preservation. Several different methods. One I've used a lot here, I have in the basement, is dry storage for things like rice, beans, wheat, sugar, and flour. It's not hard to do. You mainly need an airtight container that, well, mice, critters will not get into. And you'll need desiccant to keep things dry and oxygen absorbers to suck out the oxygen, because oxygen and moisture are your enemies when you're trying to dry preserve food. One side note there, in sugar, your enemy is moisture. Put in desiccant packs, but do not put oxygen absorbers inside with stored sugar, or you'll most likely come out with a sugar rock. And part B of food preservation is canning. And no, I don't mean going to the store and buying a can of bacon beans. I mean being able to do your own canning in mason jars. I have pretty much self-taught. I did have some help from some older relatives that guided me some, but I do have books so that I do it safely. It's preferable if you don't kill off your relatives by having botulism in your canning, but learn how to do it safely. And there's two different methods: pressure canning and water bath canning. Water bath canning is for foods that are high in acid. The main one that comes to mind would be tomatoes. That would be water bath can because they are high in acid. And pressure canning, I've done a lot of pressure canning: green beans, cabbage, onions. One year I bought like 5, 6 bags, large bags of Adelia onions, and I've got those canned up. Wife loves onions. Anyway, I've also done beef, pork, well, hamburgers, part of the beef, chicken. I've canned all these things, and they're on the shelf in the basement, and some of them are as much as 3 years old now, and they appear to be doing fine. But having the knowledge to do this, I think, is extremely important to every prepper. Number 8 on my list is off-grid water. How to keep water available to you and those with you if it's not coming out of the tap. Now, when I was on Guam, we went 2 weeks without water coming out of the tap. We had, we'd stocked up quite a bit. The fire department was coming around delivering potable water for drinking, cooking, for flushing toilets. We made trips to the ocean with 55-gallon drums in the back of a pickup, and we used that for sanitation needs. Flushing the toilet. You don't want to wash with it, but just for flushing the toilet. You didn't waste a lot of your drinking water for doing that. Now, there are a lot of different methods. I personally have a pond that is just downhill from the house, and although I would not look forward to carrying 5-gallon buckets up that hill, I do have it there. And rainwater collection is the next one that comes to mind. I mentioned knowing how to tie knots so that you could rig up a tarp to collect rainwater. And any water like this, you want to be able to have a way to purify the water, whether it's filtered or the water tablets or, well, that book I showed you just the other day in a video about water. A lot of different methods of purifying your water. Know what they are and how to do them. And last on my list, number 9, is animal care. The first topic under that would be your pets. Be able to take care of them. Have lots of extra food for your pets, and take them into consideration when you look at how much water you're going to need, because they get thirsty too. But the main thing here is, when they mean animal care, I think they mean goats, chickens, cows. I have never gone down that road, and nor do I plan to. But for those of you who do, you probably should have some books on the matter and have some knowledge on how to take care of them. Thank you for stopping by. If you found this video likable, knowledgeable, please click that big thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you'd click the subscribe button. It makes the YouTube algorithms perhaps get me out to where I can reach more people. And always remember, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Thank you for watching.